apologies, you had to wait for some time, but then we wanted everyone to attend this and be part of this important conversation that is gaining ground on in this particular sector of supply chain. I would request everyone to settle in, please. Yeah, if we could close the door also. So we have a very interesting topic, how smart wearables track worker vitals and ambient conditions to optimize worker safety. Before, in the morning we had a quick discussion about various aspects of it, and I want to begin. I want to start with you, Mr. Arora. Tech has taken over, of course, all the parts of our lives, all the facets of our lives. I mean, we use the mobile phone, which tracks us all. In a way, we are all, having that tech interference in our lives. But here, the discussion is how industries in supply chain are using tech wearables to not only optimize the worker output, but also to track their well-being. One, at Tata, what is the story like? How rampant or how mainstream has it become? What are the insights that you have gathered over maybe last couple of years? If you could share that with our audience.
Thanks. Good morning, everyone. So first of all, when we think of any solutions, sometimes we think digital and tech oriented. The first thing we do is start with a business issue or a business problem. And some of these business problems, as we know, start from looking at from a CXO perspective, raising the top line or bottom line. And we all run through meeting those targets day in and day out. One of the key and most important aspects, sometimes we do take care, but it becomes like sometimes a backseat, is on the people side. I mean, that's what I believe is one of the key things. If I take care of my people safety, and the people well-being who are working with me, they will drive the solution and objectives very clearly. And with that motive, some of our solutions are evolved on betterment of the society itself and betterment of the people who are working with them, with us, and betterment of the families, so that they can drive the value that we are looking at. So one of the important things in supply chain and manufacturing that we have seen is the use of some of these technologies around variables, as you mentioned. And we have been able to look at the person health, vitals, ensure their own well-being and safety. They're not getting into any hazardous sort of a scenario or a space where they're not supposed to be there. Whether some of these vitals can be tracked if the person is overstressed, how I can ensure there is a support that's extended to him or her during an entire work environment, right from say in transportation of goods, which is inbound logistics. Then within the manufacturing, so in-house, whatever the logistics, and in-house manufacturing, whatever the workers, wherever they are working. And then in the outbound fashion, outbound side of it as well. So it becomes very, very important to ensure their safety, well-being present, so that as supervisors, as managers, and in terms of a safety perspective, we know their well-being and they are being performing to their best of the abilities to deliver the things. I think that's one of the key things. With this, I'll leave the question, Amin, back to you.
Right. Mr. Katiyar, coming to you for the initial comment is, how do you see the prevalence and the use of smart wearables, across supply chain? I mean, how has the story been? If you look at the last 2 to 3 years, what are your observations?
So I'll take that. Thanks for that prompt on sharing my thoughts on this. I would take it as broader envelope of data and enablement coming in, or digital coming in. So wearables is one part of the jigsaw puzzle. So from the perspective or the role, like I look at is ensuring that people remain safe, and it's like broader level, like it works from the sustainability goals of the world, or UN sustainability goals, and that everybody goes back safe or remains the way he or she is. So in that one, the current, I think, approach all across at a global level is to use more of, data enablement. And with that comes in a very key part, which is the part of at the individual levels. And so as an example, like in case a person is in a factory environment and he's working and he's doing his job through the day, he comes across lots of areas which will pose some risks, like say if he works on electricals or he's working on heavy machines. Now here that data set right now, which is that interaction of the man with the machine or man with the equipment, by man I mean human, no, not necessarily just man, but that part is right now very subjective. And I think we are poised across the world with increasing levels of data being available and that data being used. So there are applications which have come in, but I think the area where it has moved so far is it's reached, I would say, initial levels. And there is much more expansion to happen. And by that, what I mean is like there are isolated solutions or there are piecemeal solutions. The integration is not as much. So the integration, which is finally relates back to that the person has to, if we talk of safety or health or well-being, then is it translating back into an action? So that part has got pieces in there. So wearables is one part. Yes, it gives the data, but how does it translate back into a result? And that's what like we all as human endeavor are focused towards. So there's been a progress, but it's an area where a lot more work, I would say, needs to be done. So as we go further, like let's explore that.
Right. Mr. Puri, your initial comment on the use of wearables. I mean, how do you see this impacting? What has been your observation so far before we move on to other parts of this conversation?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for giving us the opportunity. My perspective on this subject on smart wearables, I mean, this is a word in India, especially, has been moving around in the personal life right now. Like if you see all young generation is wearing all smartwatches and they are tracking all their calories and their gym data on it and all their vitals, and then they post it on Instagram. So I mean, I don't look this subject right now what is the impact or the usability right now. I'm talking and seeing from a futuristic perspective. I think that's a future because every worker, I mean, I don't mean worker means only a shop floor worker or anybody getting into an office or getting into a plant will be having those devices and we will be having data around it. So the once these variables becomes a new normal for the offices and for the plants, I think the key take on the technology people like us is that how we are going to collect and store that data and use it for business goals. So if you see, we have a very important value in our values in the organization, like well-being, employee well-being. So I think that can be better addressed now with these wearable uh, smart devices. And as Mr. Katiyar mentioned about sustainability, which is another important subject, and which has to be addressed by these devices from the technology standpoint of view. And plus, I have seen in US and other, there are a lot of use cases around robots and AI being used to monitor like CO2, to check another, I mean, chemicals, hazardous substances in the environment and take action on it. So end of the day, those important business values and goals of sustainability and well-being, smart variables play a very important role. And I think India need to, as a country, need to start working on it aggressively.
Rightly so, rightly so. Mr. Jangra, quickly your take on the use of smart wearables. I mean, so far, how has it impacted things? What are good and bad things that you've observed about it?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Technology is being evolving since last many years, and we see the recorded history since from industrial revolution come into picture. And since then, the experts of the industry or the industrialists or say businessmen are doing best to give opportunities and environment of their employees or workers to perform better and better. Of course, human beings or say manpower is the one of the most important assets in any organizations. And the nowadays the digitalizations or the new age technology like the wristband or any other kind of GPS kind of chips which are being used in machines and manpower which are working in within a controlled area like factory or warehouse or offshore locations, be it the sea, be it the mine, be it the hills, or say workers who are doing very uh, height height, be it at power sector, be it at telecom, we
Risky
see
conditions. Yes,
telecom
yeah.
sector,
Right.
be it a petroleum chemical industry. The use is very wide and of course very blessings also. We are able to see reach up to the last mile workers who is a worker in very difficult zone or say within a control area also, and how he is doing from safety perspective, the first point. And then of course his deliverables.
Right.
And then we come to trying to not only track the manpower, the where he is and why he is not working, but the understand behavior and to facilitate him the best so as he or she can perform the best. And of course, by this, as my co-panelist also said about this, we can analyze the data, collect the data, analyze it, and then do the more analysis and find the regions, what is the best practice and can be shared, can be worked out on it. And in similar fashions, the technology industry is also evolving these kind of technological tools more and more user friendly. The new generation is very smart and they always want more. As of now, I'm seeing these kind of equipments or say technology is talking one way. I'm sure shortly we will have say
A more
smart bikes or
interactive.
they will have
Yeah.
two-way communications.
I think that's a very,
By-
very important
Yeah,
point.
by example, let I give you one example. In one of our tower installation in Himachal, two our engineers were climbing on the tower at the top, and it was quite chilled. Chilled way was breathing, very difficult to stay on towers for longer times. They called me, sir, what happened? There is a tiger on the ground. And you can imagine if he has only one-way communication and he will just send the
Just
alert.
saying,
And if you are having two-way communication, similarly, I'm sure the people who are sitting on the days, they might have seen the film Kalapathar. The new audience may, the new generation may not have seen it. In Kalapathar, the film Amitabh, and they go to the deep mines, and there are lots of laborers who are stuck in the mines, and how they save. The few are being saved, and few are not being saved. That is very typical example of this technology. The use if we are having this technology at that time, of course, that kind of situation will not happen.
you've given a good idea for a Kala Pathar too with smart watches.
Thank you.
See, very important points raised here in the first round. But Mr. Arora, I want to move to another level of conversation, which is more people-centric, more human. You know, any of us, if you are given a choice that you wear a watch around you and it will track you wherever you are, your parents give you or your teachers give you, imagine, or your company gives you, it's a little, it's mixed with a certain kind of anxiety that, look, I'm being tracked all the time. They will know I can't even go for a cigarette break because they would know I am out there right now. So it's also about mindset, you know. So how do you ensure that a worker who has been in the company for 15, 20 years, been a normal, you know, without that tech piece, is suddenly given this thing that, look, you wear it and we will track your vitals. But is he anxious? How do you address that anxiety part of it?
So that's a very interesting question. And in fact, we faced a similar scenario when we were using some of these a couple of years ago into the industry. And exactly the same questions came to the workers, employees. Why do we need to be tracked? I mean, it's not about tracking. We built a whole adoption program to educate with snippets, video snippets of 30 seconds, 2 minutes, then 15 minutes, depicting what the cases and the benefits were. And trust me, some of these incidents that happened, then people themselves realize the importance of wearing this, and the adoption got a vertical startup there, where correlating with those themes and correlating with the incidents and the things when people were not wearing, so they immediately could correlate. It's not just about tracking, it's about safety. We also introduced features which were limited to the work zones, and moment they're out of the office hours, it is not being tracked. So we're respecting the personal data there. So that confidence make them adopt the solution faster. When these videos between the community, between the employees and the worker communities in the organization went viral, the families started pushing, especially the spouses. When the say husbands are going to work in a hazardous environment, they know at least they are safe at home, and they started pushing for them to wear. They always kept a reminder for them, and that's how in some of the stories are narrated by the employees, talk to us about it, and we feel really emotionally touched that we are saving the families. In some of these incidents in some of the plants, right, we have saved about 40 plus lives in last 2 years, which could have been fatal. And these are then captured, the moments of these are captured with the families and how they feel, and the way these then they become work, a talk of the town, and people start then respecting and adopting this solution, and they know their personal data is also secured, it's not going out. And besides the work hours, nobody is tracking. Tracking is something which is very secondary, and which is in fact maybe related to whether the person is reported in a particular work environment, because otherwise then how will the emergency services reach if there's an issue? So there are certain incidents which, so one is preventive, but still sometimes as a human, we say, okay, let's cross this boundary and see on the other side. Maybe hazardous environment, accidentally person ventures into. What happens? So suppose facto, the emergency response team is alerted. For that, the location is required. The precise location where the person affected is there. So the facilities we have coordinated with the corporate infrastructure, with the team of medical emergency response team, with the safety team, with the supervisors. So the action, the turnaround time to reach to the rescue spot is within a few minutes. The first few minutes are very critical to save that life. That way, it has been very, very beneficial in preventive as well as in terms of unfortunate incidents happening, the emergency response team reaching there in time.
So essentially, you're saying that there may be an initial, people are anxious about using it, but later on, when the use cases, when they see it benefiting, like preventing somebody's, potential accident, I think then it becomes a must-have thing, right? That's how it has changed.
Absolutely, right. It's becomes a self adoption, or it's a sort of a cultural shift.
Right.
Like we all wear our watches, or we wear safety shoes when we go into an industrial environment. I mean, that's how it protects ourselves. We know. I mean, while driving, most of us say when you're driving in a two-wheeler, we wear our glasses to protect the eye. During COVID, we all started wearing masks and PPE to protect ourselves because we know it prevents. So that's the cultural shift that happens. But earlier, we were all thinking we are all, as what will happen to us? We are all superheroes. Let the mask be aside. But yes, we see people getting infected. We started wearing it. Right.
Absolutely. Mr. Katiyar, how do we put people in the center of this conversation. It should not be about the tech end of the day. People first. How do we make this wearable technology that's benefiting all of us? Of course, a people first approach. And what are the challenges in that? Have you had any observations, personal? I mean, you have seen your own employees or other industries, vary off using it.
Let's take an individual piece. We all like heard Corona, the new bit came up, the virus is all around. And there was a time when we were all wearing masks very regularly, and now we are not wearing. Now, imagine a situation along with the mask, then there were the offices where there will be those sensors which will prompt you, say that you're wearing mask or not. And that's what is the essence of when we are looking at ensuring human safety or our own safety. So it comes down to an individual piece, like any change is not necessarily pleasant, and especially when it's intruding about a bit on your usual ways. And there is a broader, much serious question, which is about the privacy. So the example you gave, like people going out for smoke, or maybe they are going out and doing a personal thing and they don't want that data to be known. So I would say it's about a consultation and it's about an individual rights. And there's a much broader question. So we have to be respectful as well as ensuring care. So how do we go about that? There are some critical aspects, and I'll again take the Corona analogy before I come into the industrial story around it. So Corona, like when the risk is high, then we were very strictly enforcing masks. And even though frankly, the rule is still around, but we are not wearing it. So because we sense the risk is at a certain level, okay, it's weaning out. But technically or scientifically no, the risk has not gone out. It is still there. You still need to wear it. And Indian government is still very particular. They have not relaxed the rule. So it forms from that point, and then it comes down to the wearables as well. So if we are putting in a wearable which is going to help us remain safe, and say in an industrial environment, like in an industrial environment, there are things where it's very critical, it can kill you if you're doing a certain activity. So there, I think it's not as much of a matter of personal choice, because it's also about organizational decision around it, because we are trying to ensure a safe level, a responsibility which the organization has. So there, I think it's about consultation, that there is no choice. That's an employment condition. So many companies use that term, that safety is a condition of employment. So they're where the hazard or where the risk is way too high. So if Corona, again coming to the Corona analogy, is if the masks are not worn, the Corona is a lot of people, you may die, and no. So we want everybody to wear it. Fine. Your individual privacy is overruled by the law. But then there is a certain privacy element, like I'm wearing it and my personal data, how is it going to be used? I don't want to share that. And that's not risky. That's not risky, like whether I'm walking on the road at a certain time and which place I'm visiting, it's my data, what I want to do with it. So it's being conscious of that and having that consultation in our solutions around it, that we scale it where it's not acceptable. And there we have a very strong framework of agreed rules of engagement or rules, which is like law in a very societal terms, and an organizational, it could be the rules. And at the same time, having that balance with the individual privacy or individual data, which they don't want to wear. And about wearing itself, I think we all over the years, so as a personal example, there was a time when we didn't use my mobile phones, or we did not have emails, and we have adopted it. So now, you can't imagine a life without smartphones or without emails in an operating environment. So we do adopt it. As humanity, we move with the standard.
I think the key word is consultation. It enables a smooth transition to that phase of being willing to be part of this technology. Mr. Puri, are we doing the people part right so far? Because in some circumstances, of course, it cannot be. There can't be choice, because you have to do it. That's from the safety point. But are we doing largely right when it comes to convincing people, workers, that you can use this technology for your benefit? Or is there a certain amount of resistance still to this use in some cases?
Uh, I think one thing we must understand that for different set of industries and different type of industries, you will have a different solutions which works, and a different implementation strategy has to be put in place. So if we talk specifically about, say, manufacturing, and when we talk about in manufacturing, especially the chemical industries, which is very hazardous and very risky to work inside, so these are must to have. Conditions, as mentioned by Mr. Katiyar also, it's must to have conditions. And now, since we have technology to support that, so it is easier for management as well as the worker both to be in a safe place. So when you do a lot of drives around, there is nothing called convincing. Basically, it's more of educating them that how it is helping the organization and their well-being. So then automatically the subject get addressed. And in large, if you ask me, so like for example, let us take about tech companies where people are all educated. You don't need to convince them; they are already on smartphone. Young people, so like my son and my daughter, so they have been member of many gyms which has been sponsored by their organizations. Okay, so what is the idea is that they are working on the well-being of them and tracking that are they coming into stress, are their personal vitals are getting disturbed because of the work-life balance. So they do those analytics on the top of it. But yes, they have a different driver to it. Like they give a lot of other ways to convince to get it done. But yes, on the shop floor side, for automobile, like when I was working with Denso, so we had a different way to handle this subject because more of a mechanical. In chemical, like in SRF, what we do is that we need to have, I think, in future the smart helmets, which not only gives the vitals of the employee, but he also need to be sensitized that when he's entering to a zone which is risky zone, he should get the alarms on what is the temperature around, any smoke is there, how much CO2 is there, because it impacts straight the body. Because there are a lot of chemicals which are there in the air. I mean, I'll tell you, in many industries, you will find people are actually losing their total structure because of the environment. So that education has to be given, and it has to be part of a work condition rather than as in choice.
Right. Mr. Jangra, quickly, your thoughts on the people part of it. Have in your case, have you ever witnessed that people needed a certain kind of convincing before they could adopt it, or people are actually used to it because they already have a tracking device called mobile all the time with them?
Yeah, I think good questions. Everything or all technology has been evolved or developed for human being only. And of course, there is always resistance. I will tell you, yes, there is inconvenience in wearing PPE, personal protection equipments. There is inconvenience in wearing helmet. There is extra efforts in putting seat belt while you are driving. And
It was I mean, the rear seat belt is still a challenge now.
Yes,
the front
yes.
one has been sorted. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And no one imagined that the person who was sitting on the back, on the rear seat, should wear the seat belt before Siraj Mistri. And similarly, wearing the extra wrist belt is, of course, there will be resistance. When I started my career around, say, 22 years back, I started my career with HP, Hewlett Packard. And at that time, there was one project of computer delivery in entire post office across the country. And I know many post office and even officer rank people were returning those computers. If we deploy these computers in our office, there will be unemployment. And today, they are demanding that everyone we should have computer and we have the latest computer. This kind of resistance do come in every change. And in organizations, the organizations keep changing after, say, every interval of time, whether it is 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, depending on what kind of organization is, how the usage of technology, and what is the demand and say supply ratio in the world. Accordingly, there is change transformation, and I think in every organization nowadays there is a transition team who facilitate and who do these kind of transitions where human interface and say we need to change the habit. Then HR people also get involved and transition experts. They schedule training, they schedule education, learning and development. They reinforce the idea. They do the audits, and they show the benefits of those changes. If we say example of the wristband, which will be registered in name of tracking. I want to go for cigarette, then the young people are very smart. They can leave the wristwatch to some friend.
I mean,
Huh.
that's a jugaad
We
story.
can-
Indians will
there are so
always
many
find a
good
way,
things.
of course.
If anyone want to go to say any kind of activity which is not acceptable to his senior or say parents, he will find or he will see will find a way. This I will relate this kind of say kite. The kite thing, the person who is holding me through the throat is stopping me to go high. But what if he cut the thread? Will he go high? No, he will not go high. Then the guy, the kite will find after some time, no, he or she was the right and I was the wrong. This is happened with human being also when he fall in trap of wrong habits or not meeting the compliance.
No, I think, of course, I mean, but we have to maybe convince them that, look, you don't have to find shortcuts. If it is inbuilt, if you give
Yes.
them inbuilt, like, okay, you have your tea breaks and other, you can just have your own life while it's being around. Maybe it's a matter of
Yes,
how
yes.
you put it across. Mr. Arora, I want to just come. We have another 15 minutes, I guess. Yeah. Um, you know, I was just seeing the offerings that you have outside. But overall, from an industry viewpoint, when we are using wearable technology, is the architecture built around the solution, or is it just limited to just tracking and vitals? At what stage of evolution are we? That is sectoral specific, meeting all the demands, say, from a chemical industry to a coal mine, it is inbuilt. How far have we, traveled in that journey? So, yeah.
Right. That's an interesting question. And even, any technology adoption for the business benefit or solving a business issue comes through an evolution. And in fact, we have taken this journey of evolution in the last 4 years, where the first primary objective was for the safety itself, right? So it started with a business problem on preventing hazardous environment entries and saving the lives or saving the incidents. So we did bend into a journey of co-creating the solution, because some of these solutions which were available that time were not in industry specific. We started with the resources industry, where the hazardous risks were very high. And we created some products which were first gen of wearables. It then required an integration with the platform and the application to ensure the right data comes in for interpretation and analysis. We created a number of analytics engine which evolved, and which also now get into more predictive based solutions. So seeing the pattern of the workers, seeing the pattern of the employees, so whether it's going to be getting entry into a risky and hazardous zone, so we issue an early warning in that case, so there's sufficient time before the actual incident happens. And based on that is then not just about integration of device, network, application, platform, and the analytics engine. The evolution has also been done also to look at the adoption and scalability, the cultural shift that has happened. And that has taken significant time, because ultimately it's for safety. And anything as seatbelt example, I really like the way, I mean, it takes time for people to evolve into a different mindset. And integration of this becomes the core, where the evolution from, say, just the data coming in and using it for industrial integration becomes the key. Now, when this data we have seen started integrating with the enterprise systems, which gave a benefit on productivity also. So one is able to determine the actual productive hours of a particular, say, a business line or a product line, and then we're able to look at balancing those out in terms of improving efficiency. There's certain, we all know in a business cycle, in a production environment, in a supply chain environment, there are fluctuations in manufacturing patterns. Each worker may not be loaded the way it is. Some may be overloaded, some may not be. The idea of that is to balance digitally also. So we gave those insights to the plant heads also to help balance the lines and balance the productivity. So the throughput increased significantly. There were benefits then came out in terms of the employee fatigue levels. So particular type of job which require a lot of working in a environment which is risky, say movement of heavy material or managing large heavy objects, equipments, complex equipments, the stress level which is there, so which increases significantly and helps also to have a pattern of calming him down after say 20 minutes of stress. Those insights were driven. So it became an HR and industrial relation also jumping in terms of having this solution and inputs so that they get their data and they augment it with a more rotational based manpower there. So some of these benefits we have seen, and that's how it's gradually evolving. So then just from safety, it is coming to productivity, it is coming to betterment of human life, betterment of ultimately we take care of people. That's how it's evolving. It ultimately leads to an increase in gains what originally the CXOs had been thinking of. But yes, people are now connected. They feel more passionate. They feel more that they are being taken care of. So that's the key thing.
Mr. Katiyar, your thoughts on this power of this particular aspect?
Yeah, so you raised an interesting point. I'll take a little bit from there, like from where we have loads, like where current situation in India, or for that matter, like developing economies, lots of them, in terms of safety management is an interesting one. Taking that rear seat belt example, wearing of rear seat belts, like I'm not sure how many of you are aware, like, but the evolution has been very interesting in India itself. So the new Motor Vehicle Act actually requires it to be worn before that, which came in 2-3 years back. Earlier to that, the minister actually gave a hard time to the automobile industry that they have to put the rear seat belts where they were not putting it without any extra cost to the consumer. So this was a very particular instruction by a transport minister. So those things were happening in the background, and what it finally leads up is a serious accident like Cyrus Mysteries. Then the whole perception shifts, and that's the story is interesting. So now there's the opportunity, and like say, very interesting personal example. Like I took Uber after many months now, because usually there would be no rear seat belt, and I wouldn't, like for last 25 years or 30 years, I haven't traveled in a car where there's no seat belt, and I've not worn it. So I've refused cars. My organization allowed it, so it was easy. Then it became a personal practice. So I'll not go, and that does create a lot of problem for me individually, because I end up hailing a cab and waiting forever. But this time the Uber driver himself was very insistent, sir, आपको belt पहनना है. मैं कहा अच्छा, बहुत अच्छी बात है. नहीं, मेरा फाइन लगेगा, आपको पहनना है, मतलब you should wear it. So I said yes, very good. Then I told him later on, that's really good, and I've been doing it. Now it's a change, and that's what in safety terms, or making people lives better, we in safety sciences or application of safety sciences are working towards. Now coming into the part of the architecture which you had raised at. Now what has happened in evolution of safety is a lot of data, a lot of laws, we are at a stage where we are collecting a lot of data in disparate levels, but it needs to be made sense. And lives have to be made simpler. And not just that we all feel overwhelmed with the WhatsApps and LinkedIn's and so many other platforms to look at right from the day, the clutter. And within that, the clutter or within that is the essential of maintaining health and safety, which is about your survival or life and making it better. So is the integration come to that level of feedback and that direct feedbacks in our broader life? And then within the organization, it's not. So borrowing from what you said earlier, it was actually a case with me in one of the places. So in the driving, we had put these individual identifiers for the drivers, and they can only drive the car that way. There is a individual card. So there was this in Algeria, there was this accident. He wanted to go for an Eid or some festival, and then the cars could not be driven above 120 kilometers per hour. But in the desert, he drove it at 140, which we knew about that. And then it rolled over. He had a head injury. And what turned out is the card was somebody else's and the wires of the device were taken out. So the device was not even looking. So those things are there, but those are individual. We still need to look at like broader distribution. So are the broader distributions, I think technology is poised there in terms of being able to, so as Mr. Arora said, it's about the analytics and to from safety management point of view or making our lives better point of view, it needs to give us feedbacks. Not like sometimes a vibrator is fine, a vibrating alarm on a mobile is fine, but some of the places we need very hard cutoffs because those can cause us into a very serious injury. And in a car, rear seat belt is almost of that kind. But have we reached up in technology in terms that car would not drive if we haven't won? That's a question which remains in terms of integration to how do we scale that?
Right. My team is here. They're just saying that we're almost out of time, but I want to get Mr. Puri remarks on the architecture part of it. Is it, is it offering enough solutions for industry-specific industries, or still, there's way to go?
Quarter you find something new will come, like you will find BLE coming, and then suddenly you'll find a watch coming, and then suddenly you'll find another device or another. Like, to be honest with you, the future is that it has to be integrated with your PPE. The first level of hardware integration has to happen there, and then on the top of that, you need to have a lot of architecture around the data modeling using AI, and also the cloud strategy also has to be planned like that. It cannot be a standalone thing which will, because humongous data will flow in.
Right.
So the architecture is still to be evolved fully.
Final comment, Mr. Jangra.
I think architecture, the word itself is a very broad and very large horizon it has. If I talk in present context, then 5G rollout is around the world is happening, and this is enabling lots of changes in digitalization and IoT and the wristband or say GPS tracking, whatever it is, the technology is being used. The architecture within an organization is say in present context or present available technology may be at a mature stage, but it will keep on changing with time. If everything being done by this generation, then what next generation will do? They will of course involve, they will be busy and they will be doing lots of new things and new revolutionary technology they will brought into picture, which will facilitate the operation very smoothly, or say more smoothly. Uh, the with 5G, machine will talk with machines, and human being will also talk with human being and machines also. You can imagine in the morning when the soft floor is being open, then before reaching the employee, manager will or say control room will enable all machines to be to be ready, and all inventory will be ready. All alerts to the say line managers or say suppliers will be flashed, and this is happening is very near future. We will see all these things in next say 1 year maximum. So this is a very interesting phase. You will see all new news and new kind of information, new kind of processes, which is happening in year 2023,
Right.
2024.
Right. Great. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but the very important, insights emerging with our thought leaders here on the panel, right from the architectural, gaps that need to be addressed, to the people part, to the two-way communication. So I thank all my panelists for being patient, waiting for this panel, and then sharing these important insights, and for my audience who was very attentive all the while. Thank you so much.